If you're an off-roader, by now you've probably heard something about the Bronco having weak tie rods.
Snapped again.
But guys, what if the tie rods on the Bronco are actually perfectly fine and the real problem is driver error? Hey guys, Matt McAdam here, aka Desert Chief, only on Driving Lines Chasing Dust. On today's episode, we were talking about the notorious Bronco tie rod problem. This is something that I've seen a lot of people making content about, and mostly they're talking about how a lift or bigger tires or other components, or just how inherently the design of the Bronco's steering setup is prone to failure. To be honest with you guys, I actually have a very different approach to this issue. So in this video, I'm going to break down for you what the actual problem is, what's causing the tie rods to break, and a couple of things that you can do to make sure that it doesn't happen to you. I'm just gonna say this right now before all the Jeep guys come barreling into the comment section with their Bronco hate. I have 23,000 miles on my Bronco Raptor now. And I'd be willing to argue that I have more dirt miles on this car in the first year of ownership than most Jeep owners do over the lifetime of owning their vehicle. Furthermore, the way I drive is harder than anybody should with the car payment, and it's been in every environment available in North America. And yet, I still have never had a single steering issue with this Bronco. Funniest part is most of the Bronco hate comments from the Jeep crowd comes from a guy who bought a $65,000 Wrangler, then put $20,000 in aftermarket parts on it, and then finally stood back and said, "I'm ready to hit the Rubicon Trail." So just stop it. Look guys, we get it. Your precious solid axle has superior steering to an IFS. Nobody here is arguing that. But some of us out here like other things about their 4x4, like ride quality, or vehicle control, or a lack of death wobble, for instance. But anyways, back to the main issue. Ever since the Bronco came out, there have been some reports, whether it was on forums or YouTube videos or just personal anecdotes, of people who have broken or bent their tie rods out there on the trail. For some reason or another, these stories got amplified throughout the community, and then all of a sudden the Bronco was known to be a vehicle with weak tie rods. Now, to be clear, I'm not denying that that has happened, because it's actually happened in front of me several times with other vehicles that were on the trail. In fact, I've had to personally repair a couple of those vehicles, sometimes more than once. But I'm here today to dispel some of the myths as to why this is happening to certain vehicles, how some of the solutions out there aren't actually fixing the problem, and then lastly, the ways that you can actually prevent it from happening to you. All right guys, let's dive right into it. Reason number one why Bronco owners are breaking their tie rods out there is because they're always running their front locker. For me, this is by far the most frequent scenario that I've seen when people break their tie rods on the trail. It's because their front locker was engaged. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with having a front locker. It's been a staple aftermarket item for a lot of off-road guys for decades. But like I said, guys, this video is all about driver error, and really the only vehicles out there that have front and rear lockers from the factory have been the Jeep Wrangler, the Gladiator now, and now the Bronco. So while off-road enthusiasts are very familiar with lockers and when you should use them, I would say that majority of the consumers out there don't really know when to use a front locker, when it's appropriate, and when you shouldn't be using it. So that's why it's at the top of my list, because almost every time that I've witnessed a tie rod failing on a Bronco, it was when the front locker was engaged and it really shouldn't have been. So why is a front locking differential causing tie rod failures on a car? Well, very quickly, when you push that front locker button on your dashboard and you engage your front locker, what you're actually doing is you are locking your front axle so that your left tire and your right tire are spinning at exactly the same rate. So when that locker is not engaged by default, it allows those two tires to spin at different rates, and this allows you to actually turn, because when you're turning, your inside tire is spinning slower than your outside tire. So you have to have that differential that actually allows your tires to spin at different rates when it's unlocked. However, when your front locker is actually engaged and those tires are spinning at the same rate, you really can't go around a turn, or you can't make any kind of turns when that front locker is engaged, because those tires are going to want to grab and slip all the time. So oftentimes when I'm out on the trail and I'm spotting somebody up an obstacle and I can tell that they're maybe a novice off-roader or they're just getting into it, this is their first off-road vehicle, and I can see them kind of fighting the steering wheel, I immediately know what's going on. I can tell that their front locker is engaged. So my first call out to them is turn off your front locker. And your front locker is part of your drivetrain, which is a very robust system in your vehicle. It's very, very strong and sturdy because it has to be. So when you feel that stiffness in your steering when your front locker is engaged, that's your steering actually fighting against your drivetrain. And you can imagine that your drivetrain is going to win that battle every time. And this becomes especially true when you're bound up against a rock on one side, or you have an obstacle that you're trying to get up and over and your front locker is engaged when it really shouldn't be. This is a very easy way to have a steering part fail, and because the tie rods are the weak link of your steering, that is usually what is going to bend or break first. How do you avoid this? Because the front locker is a great option to have on your vehicle, and you should be able to use it when you absolutely need it, but that is the only time in which you should use it. The only time that I do run my front locker is when I have my wheels pointed in the direction that I want to go. I have a clear path in front of me, and all I'm missing is that extra traction of my tires spinning at the same rate. I will engage the locker, I will drive up and over, maybe even just a foot or two, and then disengage that front locker so that I'm not fighting it with the steering and causing a breakage. All right, now to number 2. The second biggest reason I see people breaking tie rods is because they're bouncing up an obstacle to try to get over it. And once again, this applies to more of the newbie or novice off-roader, because if you've been off-roading for a while, you know, especially if you're rock crawling, that if you start to bounce going up something, that's when you let off the gas and you kind of reset yourself and you try to get traction going up again. But too often, you guys, I see people out on the trail trying to make it up and over an obstacle. I've seen this in Moab. I've seen this in the local mountains here, like where I'm at right now. I've also seen this on the Rubicon Trail, where people are just trying to do everything they can to get up and over something, and the tires are just bouncing along, getting traction, losing traction, getting traction, losing traction. This is a very easy way to break a tie rod. Because they're trying so hard to get up, they're kind of sawing the wheel a little bit back and forth, maybe not even knowing that they're doing it. And when you're dropping and you're picking up the front end and you're dropping and picking up the front end, you're going to be fighting that steering pull. The Bronco platform has a very good power steering system. It's very strong. So when you're hopping up an obstacle like that, it's very easy for your steering to just overpower and get that traction really quickly. And if you time it just right, you could very easily break or bend a tie rod at its weakest point. Once again, you guys, I'm not going to just lay out the problem. I'm going to give you the solution. How you avoid this happening to you is that if you ever feel the front of your vehicle bouncing as you're kind of going up an obstacle, let off the gas, roll back down if you can, reset yourself, maybe find a better line, and if you have to use your front locker to get up there, then use that and just slowly creep up, because that is the way you're going to get up there without breaking a tie rod. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is a poor wheel and tire choice. Now, I know that I said this was going to be all about driver error, so bear with me because it is. It's no secret that the trend right now is having a wide stance on your vehicle. Whether you got a truck or an SUV or even a passenger car, having that wider stance just kind of looks cooler. People are really into that look, and myself included. So I'm not going to dock anybody for that. However, if you're trying to achieve that look by having a low offset wheel or maybe a wheel spacer, it's going to come with its own set of problems that you should be aware of. Have you ever asked yourself why factory wheels have such a high offset? Why are the tires always sucked into the fender well? Why is it that you have to go buy an aftermarket wheel to get that wider stance? Well, in order to understand why OEMs build their vehicles like this, you have to be able to understand what scrub radius is. So I'm going to try to explain to you in the simplest way that I can. I want you to, for a minute, imagine that you're staring at the front of your Bronco suspension on just one side. Now you draw an imaginary line along your steering axis, which means you're drawing an imaginary line from your upper ball joint down past your lower ball joint. And then you're going to draw a second imaginary line going down the center of your tire. At some point, those two lines should intersect. Now, wherever that intersection is in relation to the ground underneath your tire is your scrub radius. So if you're following along, you can imagine how if you have a lower offset wheel or a wheel spacer, it can move that imaginary line down the center of your tire outwards more. And what that means is the intersection of those two lines would be then below the surface of the ground. And what that means is that your steering is going to have to work harder to turn your tire. Most OEMs are going to try to get their factory wheel that comes on the car to a position of no scrub, because that is the easiest on all of the joints and the steering components on your vehicle. It's not until you go modifying your vehicle with aftermarket wheels and wheel spacers and things like that, that then modify your scrub radius and add extra wear and tear to those items. you're going to be driving on these wheels and tires for a long time. What that can do is weaken some of those steering components like your tie rods. Most importantly, it's going to weaken your tie rod joints, and that is where you see a lot of common failures with these vehicles. But it also weakens your ball joints, and it also adds premature wear and then premature failure of your wheel bearings. Look, I'm no stickler about factory wheels. I mean, I've got KMC KM446 Mesa forged wheels on this, which are lower offset. They're a 0 backspace wheel, so they're definitely a lower offset than the factory Bronco Raptor tires, and therefore I do get a little bit of a wider stance with this vehicle, but I like that stance. I'm not saying you should run high offset wheels or factory wheels all the time. I just want you to be aware that this is something that can lead down the road to a tie rod failure with your vehicle. And if you know that, then maybe you could do some things like upgrading your tie rods or upgrading your steering rack to make up for some of that lost strength through having a lower offset wheel. So that's pretty much it. Those are my top 3 reasons, and I want to be very, very clear here. I am not saying that you shouldn't go upgrade your steering on your Bronco. I'm not saying that these are the only reasons that tie rod ends break. I'm just saying that these are things that people don't think about when it comes to tie rod failures. They often want to blame the lift or the tires or the equipment or the steering inherently that comes on the Bronco for having all these failures, but I want people to understand that a lot of it can be mitigated by just changing some of your driving habits and then understanding how you're modifying your vehicle is affecting your other components that are on it. If you're doing a lot of rock crawling, if you want to put bigger tires on your Bronco, if you find yourself doing a lot of more challenging trails out there, I think you should absolutely upgrade your steering, but that is regardless of being a Bronco or a Jeep or a Tacoma or a 4Runner or any vehicle out there, you should be upgrading your steering. My main point here is that the tie rods on the Bronco are not the big bad boogeyman of your trip. You don't have to worry about them breaking all the time if you're doing the things I laid out in this video. Every single other IFS vehicle out there is susceptible to these types of failures if you're driving in an abusive way. But if you find yourself wanting to put 37s or 40s on your Bronco and you want to go rock crawling and you want to use your vehicle for what it's built for, I would definitely think about doing tie rods on there. It's just extra peace of mind, and you can never have enough of that out on the trail. But most importantly, you guys, this is something that I tell everybody out there, regardless of what you're driving, make sure you have a spare set of those with you in the car, because if you don't and you break one, you're really gonna have a difficult time getting off the trail. If you guys found any value at all in this content, please make sure that you guys subscribe to Driving Line. We're making all kinds of videos like this for you guys, and you'll know whenever we drop a new video. And please give me the thumbs up underneath this video and share it with your friends who are also into off-road. And if you guys have any questions, please drop it in the comment section. I go in there from time to time and I answer them as best as I can. Lastly, I hope everybody had a great new year and that you guys have a great 2024. Next up is going to be King of the Hammers for me. I can't believe it, guys, but I've been doing this show for 6 years on Driving Line, and I really owe it to you guys. I've made a lot of friends. I've been able to make videos for all kinds of enthusiasts out there, and I can't wait to share with you guys some of the new content that I got coming up this year. As always, it's been your host, Matt McAdam, aka Desert Chief, only on Driving Line's Chasing Dust, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching Driving Line. If you guys like this video, consider subscribing to our channel so you'll never miss any of the content we create here. Whether you're into trucks, Jeeps, imports, domestic vehicles, or anything in between, we are here to fuel your passion. So hit that subscribe button and we'll see you guys next time.